How's it going, fellow pickers? I'm going to try to answer the question I get asked all the time, which is how do I play faster on the mandolin? Okay, so I want to start this video with a quick disclaimer. I don't consider myself a super fast mandolin player or a super fast anything player, really. The It's a part of my technique that's been kind of lacking for a long time. And the last month or so, I've really buckled down and decided that I was going to, work on playing at higher tempos. And I've picked up a lot of techniques and ideas that have really, really helped me, and I think they'll help you too. The other thing that I really want to bring up is that you don't have to play fast to be a great musician. I know a lot of great musicians and a lot of people that are some of our most respected musicians don't play fast and don't really care to play fast. What's important first is to get good feel, good tone, good dynamics, articulation, be able to play really clean, have good control of your rhythm. All of those things are so much more important than being able to play fast. But that doesn't change how awesome it is when you can just crush a solo, going at 130 or more beats per minute. In the intro, I was at 155. It's a great feeling when you can play that fast, and it doesn't hurt if you're trying to get into a great band that you can burn a solo. All right, so I think learning how to play quickly can be broken down pretty easily into three parts: getting the most out of your body, getting the most out of your gear, and getting the most out of your songs. So we're gonna start with the first one, getting the most out of your body, and this is a pretty probably the most extensive one, and it's something that I've hit other videos on various parts of these topics, but maybe we'll try to compile them all and talk about how to use them to play quickly. The first thing is that you want your body to not be tense, so have no tension. Don't have any unnecessary gripping or what I've noticed for me is I tend to tense up the back of my neck and curl my toes a lot if I'm really, really frustrated or really focusing on a solo or something. And all of that's wasted energy. You're just blowing it. And it could be used toward going to the parts that are actually playing the instrument, right? So try not to hold on to any unnecessary tension. The other thing is to make sure you're not contorting your body. I know that a lot of people, when we are focusing, we tend to tense up. And you'll see that a lot with right hand, the right arm, the right shoulder. You'll see that in their left hand where it starts to move slowly because they're fighting through the tension that they have, or because their hand is in an awkward position. And we'll see that a lot in the right hand as well. So what I see some people doing is they'll rest their wrist on the mandolin, or they'll have their wrist too far out. And what we want is we want our wrist to be straight. What I tell people is ideally when you're playing, someone should be able to take a picture of you, Photoshop your instrument out, and you shouldn't look like you're possessed. You might look a little goofy because you're going to sound like this, but you don't want to look like that either, where your body is all in these weird positions. And every time you're contorting your body, you're restricting the muscle flow, in your hands and everything. So the big thing, keeping your right hand wrist as straight as you can. The other part of your right hand that matters quite a bit is how you're holding your pick. You want a good, secure, firm pick hold. So what I do, I tend to just hold it in a fist like this, and you'll oftentimes see that like I'm anchoring my fingers. It's a habit that I do like 50-50. Sometimes I'll anchor and sometimes I'll float free. I don't know that it's the worst thing, but the what it does is it does help me keep a good distance, and so that helps me keep my wrist straight. As far as your pick goes, you want to keep your pick at a slight angle, and what that does is it helps you kind of clear your strings easier because you're not fighting a whole, the whole side of the pick trying to clear the string. It's kind of slicing through. And when you get up to those high tempos, it also helps you get a cleaner tone, or a warmer tone, I should say. So if I play with my pick flat, that's the kind of sound I'm getting. If I play with my pick angled, That's the kind of sound I'm getting. And then the last thing that I really want to hit with your right arm is to figure out whether moving from your wrist works better for you or moving from your elbow works better for you. As you saw in the video, I tend to kind of move more from my elbow when I'm going really, really quickly and move from my wrist when I'm playing slower tunes. And the reason for me on this is I'm thinking of it like a runner, where runners don't just move with just their ankles when they're trying to run. They're moving from their hips, and a lot of the power is coming from their hips. Your stronger joints are the ones that are going to be closest to your core, right? So your shoulder is stronger than your elbow, is stronger than your wrist, is stronger than your fingers. So for me, I'm able to get a quicker motion moving from my elbow than I am from my wrist. Now, this is a really debated topic, and so I'm going to explain the other side too. There are plenty of people that play well from their wrist. Obviously, people that come to mind are Chris Thiele and Sierra Hall do a lot of more wrist. People like Sam Bush or Adam Steffi do a lot more elbow. So playing from your wrist tends to give you a lighter tone, which is nice. And then it's also easier to have an economy of motion, meaning that your elbow, because it's so strong, tends to it can go all over the place, and you can have a bigger motion than just your wrist. So you can stay closer to strings if you're playing with your wrist. Now on your left hand, it's going to be a similar idea. You want to make sure that your wrist is really, really straight, so you're not restricting muscle flow. And so the one thing that can help with that is to make sure that your instrument's neck angle is in a good spot. And everyone's different. I'm a short guy, so my angle tends to be around here, but people that are taller might need a different angle for them. One of the big things to remember is to keep your neck up and slightly out. If your neck tends to go too far down, our wrist tends to curve upward. And if it's too far back, our wrist can tend to pop the opposite way. So what you can do is basically just find the spot where you can move, you can hit every part of your fretboard without your wrist bending. A great example of this is Tyler Grant. You can find tons of videos of him. He's a Winfield champion, and I know he's won Rocky Grass, and he has his band and everything. And when you see him play, he has an amazing neck angle, and he does amazingly complicated things and plays at really, really high speeds and never really moves his wrist past what would be, normal. So keeping both of your wrists straight is super important. And then the last thing that I want to hit the last two things that I want to hit for your left hand is to make sure that your fingers stay curved so that you're playing on your fingertips. And what you want to think is take your left hand and lay your fingers flat and push down. Now put them on the tip and notice that you have more strength when your fingers are on their tip. So the idea behind this is the same as like Greek and Roman architecture, where they use a lot of arches. It's stronger because it displaces the strength or displaces the pressure. So if I have my finger flat, there's energy coming or pressure coming from all parts of my finger. And it's basically, most of it's wasted. If I curl it, it's only coming from the very tip of my finger. And I'm able to put out a lot more strength with a lot less effort. So that way I'm not tired after a 2-3 hour gig that might be cooking the whole time. And then I think the last thing is, again, economy of motion. Make sure that you're not lifting your fingers too far off of the fretboard to where you have the farther they go away, the farther they have to come back. And when you're playing quickly, you don't want to be moving a whole lot. So I have a really good exercise that was given to me for left hand economy of motion, and I'm going to be putting that onto my Patreon page as like a little little extra added lesson. I'll be adding the link in the description, and you can find it there, as well as a whole bunch of other tabs, as well as the tab for the intro video that I did. Okay, so the second thing that I want to talk about is your instrument and your gear. Now, I don't want to make it sound like if you go out and spend thousands of dollars, you'll get an instrument that'll magically make you play faster, because you won't. You still want to fix yourself first. But if you have gear that isn't set up to play quick or isn't able to play quick, you're not going to play quick. So the first thing that you want to think about is the setup of your instrument. If it's set up well, it'll be easier for you to play. So, and this kind of will come down to what your right arm or right hand technique ends up being. So if you play a lot more from your wrist, you can have lower action and not worry about buzz, because you're going to be probably picking a little bit lighter. If you're playing from your elbow, you tend to have more force, and you're probably going to need a higher action. So I have two instruments. One, my Collings MTGT, I have set up with a much lower action, so that I can play a little bit lighter. Now it also has a pickup, which also will factor into that. If you have the electronics on your instrument, then you still don't have to play with as much force, and you can still have lower action. Now this mandolin, the one that I use if I'm playing into like a single condenser, or playing in a band, or playing in a jam where I need more volume, I do have my action set higher. And that can be an important factor, right? What context are you playing? If you're playing live and you have your own mic, or if you have a built-in pickup system, or something along those lines, you don't have to worry about your string height as much for the sake of volume. If you're not, then you do, right? So if you're playing into a one microphone, or if you're playing into in a jam, or if you're just playing acoustic and you want to make sure that you're heard, but you still want to play fast, you're still going to need slightly higher action. Now, any good tech should be able to go through your instrument and talk through what you need it to be and work that out. I know in the shop that I run, we will sit down with a person before doing a setup and after to make sure, and we'll watch him play and to make sure that his instrument's fitting his style of playing. Now, the other thing that you may want to consider is what kind of pick you're using. I use the Blue Chip the TP1R the most. And this has one rounded point and two pointed edges. And what I really like about this is that I can use the rounded edge to get a warmer tone, and I can use the point when I need speed. And the idea is the same that we were talking about before, where if you're playing the pick flat, you have too much pick and it can be hard to break through. With a rounded edge, it can be equally difficult because, again, you have more pick to try to get through the strings. Whereas if you have a point, they can sometimes clear a little bit easier. And that's not true for everybody. I know people that use rounded picks and do very, very well with them and play really, really quick. For me, I need something with a little bit more of a point. The other thing that you might want to consider is what kind of strings you're using. So if your strings are old and crusty and grimy, you're not going to be able to move your left hand as easily through them. So make sure that you have fresh strings, or else you're not going to get anywhere. The other thing to consider is the gauge, right? The higher gauge you use, the harder they are to play. But the lighter gauge you use, the quieter they are. And there's a fine balance sometimes between that, where we tend to play lighter when we are trying to go fast, so a light string can be too quiet sometimes. Whereas the medium strings can still push out enough volume, but they're harder to play. And again, this is going to be a personal preference thing. For me, I've always used at least a medium gauge, and normally I'll use the custom mediums from D'Addario that have slightly higher gauges on the treble strings to kind of even things out. And so right now what I'm using are the XT custom medium gauge strings, and I'll put a link in the description below if you click that link, obviously, and buy it from that. You do give me a small commission, which is great. It helps to keep the channel running. But the strings do make a big difference, what kind of strings you're using. And then whether you want to go with coated or not, the coated strings can kind of weigh down your tone a bit, but they're easier to move your left hand on. So the last piece of gear that I want to talk about is hands down the most important piece of gear, which is a metronome. It is so important to be practicing with a metronome when you're trying to learn to play quickly. You want to be able to do things consistently, and you want to kind of have an idea of what you're going to do before you play it, so that you're not, your hands aren't being slowed down, so your brain can think about what's going on. The metronome that I use is the DB90 from Boss, and this is like the metronome on steroids. You can like pre-program things, and it has all of these features that I don't quite understand, and like drum machine type stuff, and you can save settings and things like that. It's an awesome metronome. Obviously it's a little big, so it doesn't quite fit in a case all the time, so I do have some backup metronomes that I keep in cases. But the best thing you can do using a metronome is to start the song at a tempo you can get, and do it 3 times in a row without any mistakes, and then move it up by anywhere from 2 to 5 BPMs a minute. and keep doing that until you hit the speed that you want it to be at. And a little trick that I've learned is not to necessarily stop at your tempo, but to go a little bit past for a while. So play it maybe 5 to 10 beats faster than what you're hoping to be able to play it at. And what that does is then when you go back to your tempo, it feels a little bit easier. So absolutely get a metronome. There's nothing in the world that will help you become a faster player than a metronome. And it helps you obviously develop your time and your groove, and finding the pocket and all of those things is so important. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the songs that you are playing. What are the music that you're playing? So you want to choose songs that are meant to be fast songs. So on two ways this is important. One is that some songs just don't sound good fast, right? Waltzes oftentimes sound really bad when you play them super, super fast. So you wouldn't want to pick Lonesome Moonlight Waltz and then just try to burn it, right? It would sound awful. But there are also other tunes that are just more technical and are better taken at a moderate speed. Or ones that really are maybe are in a key that's uncomfortable for you, or one that you haven't spent a lot of time in. And if you want to sit down and really work on building your speed, you probably don't want to be also equally focusing on learning a tune or just trying to get the techniques down for the tune. All of those things want to be done separately. So there's a whole, mountain of super fast bluegrass songs that you can be looking at, and a lot out of the Monroe repertoire, obviously Will Haas and Big Mon, and there's just so many. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm also going to, on my Patreon page, add a list of fast-paced bluegrass songs to work on that are relatively easy, but they're meant to be fast, which means the melodies are all easily accessible, and they're very intuitive for quick playing. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is whether, even if you're doing like a vocal tune, you want to be using licks that you know by heart, right? That are down. You want to eliminate as much time from your head to your hands as you can. So if you don't find yourself having a large repertoire of licks, go and listen to as many fast players as you can. So all the mandolin players in the Special Consensus, Lonesome River Band, Adam Steffi is a great one, obviously. But you want people that are just tearing the mandolin apart. And what I would recommend is getting the Amazing Slowdowner, which you are able to hear the song in the same key at a slower tempo. And you can work through those and grab as many of their licks as they can. So why try to reinvent the wheel if there's people already playing fast? Figure out what they're doing and then try to learn how to do that. And then don't do songs that are in keys you don't feel comfortable with and then try to burn them, right? So if you're not playing in B or B flat very often, and you go to a jam with a lot of MASH players that love those keys, and you're just you don't want to fall flat on your face, right? So if those things happen, then go back home from the jam and remember the tunes that they played and work through them and learn them. But try to, again, take things that you feel comfortable with and work those up to faster speeds. Take things that make sense to be played fast and play them fast. Don't take things that are beyond your technical ability and try to play them fast. All right, everyone, I really hope this video helped. If you want to see more videos on mandolin or guitar, banjo, fiddle, or resonator, subscribe to this page. I try to post weekly. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? What have you done that helped to make you a faster player? Leave those thoughts in the comments and maybe help me and some of the other pickers out there build up their speed.